get this party started. Welcome to Madiba at My Image Studios. We are so happy that you're here. How many are here for the very first time? Yeah, that's nice. How do you like this place? It's pretty cool, right? We call it the living room of Harlem. This is where Silicon Harlem was born. And we are, so fortunate to have a great visionary named Carlton Brown, who's the owner of this building. It's a green and smart building. It's carbon neutral, and it's state of the art. One of the most fantastic buildings in all of New York City. There's 3 theaters. You're actually only in one of the 3 theaters that are here. So we're very excited to continue our relationship with Carlton and grow the tech sector right here in this space. That leads us to this great evening of partnership. I like my voice to be booming, but somehow this mic is not giving it to me. Can we get a little bit more just like banging, like, I come from that rapper mentality. Anyway, we have a great night tonight. We're very honored with our special guest, who we'll introduce in just a moment. Before I do that, we've got a great partner tonight that has done incredible work to keep the tech sector moving, growing, and bustling here in New York City. A great resource for startups, for anyone that's interested in tech. It is the Digital.NYC folks. And we have Justin Cena from Gus that's going to also bring some remarks very quickly here.
All right. Thank you, Clayton. All right. So welcome to the Digital.NYC 5-borough tour in Harlem. My name is Justin Cena, and I am the marketing director at Gus.com, and by extension, Digital.NYC. And I'll be co-emceeing the evening here with Clayton. We're going to talk about Digital.NYC in a bit, but just for a little bit of background, the Digital.NYC 5-borough tour was a series of 7 events across all 5 boroughs celebrating tech and startups in New York City, really designed to bring you the resources available to you to help you succeed either in the tech ecosystem or in the startup ecosystem. And the reason that I'm saying that in past tense is because this is the last event. So you made it, so give yourself a round of applause. We have 2 hashtags tonight, #DigitalNYC, #Harlem. Use them so we can find you. We have an amazing event lined up tonight. Thanks very much to Silicon Harlem. We've got Mignon Clyburn here talking about some of the, and I'll let Clayton introduce, but talking about some of the net neutrality rulings. We've got 2 panels. One is about New York City startup resources, and the other is about the resources and kind of the experiences that Harlem entrepreneurs and other kind of community organizers are having here, starting their businesses or being involved in the tech ecosystem. So these are the experienced folks talking about what's happening here. Before we get into that, I do want to give such a big special thank you to Silicon Harlem. They really helped make this happen, so round of applause for you guys. And then I'm going to pass it to Clayton. Clayton.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Again, this mic is just a little weak for me, but my grandfather was a preacher, so you had booming. So we are quite honored and fortunate. When you talk about living legends, historical figures, we can point right to our FCC Commissioner, Mignon Clyburn. She is the first woman ever to serve as chair of the FCC. And like many of us in this room, she has had her eyes on fairness, on openness, on a sharing economy. She has truly lived up to what we all hold as a valuable part of community, which is economic equality. And she's able to use, in her own position, she's able to add our voice to the debate that goes on in government. And as you know, we recently had landmark decisions made by the FCC, 2 of them, literally back to back. One net neutrality, and the other around municipal broadband. These will be things that will be talked about in textbooks in colleges for years, because it protects every American. And that's why we call her our Beyonce of technology.
So what the format will be is Clayton and I are going to do a fireside chat with the commissioner, where the idea is we're going to really sort of drill down into the thinking behind some of these very key issues which she holds dear, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Then followed by that will be our two panels, both tied into the Digital.NYC. So, Mr. Banks? Well, without further ado, allow me to introduce, right? That's what people say. Commissioner Mignon Clyburn of the FCC. Let's give her a round of applause. Let's welcome her to New York City and Silicon Harlem.
Thank you so much. Okay.
So good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening. I'm from the South, so I don't need a booming mic. I'm naturally booming.
It's being recorded.
Oh, okay, recorded. Oh, so hello, everyone.
Well, my mic is on, so now I'm
Hello?
booming all of a sudden. That's good. So we wanted to start the conversation out, and this is conversational, as Bruce mentioned. So start thinking about what you might want to ask this FCC commissioner. Not that she may answer all of them, but definitely we want to make this an interactive and engaging experience for all of us. But we thought maybe you could start out, Commissioner Clyburn, with just sort of your opinion and thoughts around the recent rulings and why, you know, a community like Harlem or any community around the country should be paying attention to this.
Again, good evening, everyone. It is such an honor for me to be in this incredible room. What do you call it? The living room of Harlem. I like that. I like that for more than one reason, because with the exception of my grandmother, every grand that I had on my maternal side of the family came up to Harlem to live. There were opportunities denied to them in my home state of South Carolina, which I love, but we have and had our set of challenges. And so when you are nurtured in that type of environment, where your parents literally met in jail fighting for freedoms that we all enjoy and continue to aspire, it should not be you should not consider it a stretch for me to be a person through this regulatory body called the FCC, that this person is interested in closing the gaps, being an enabler of opportunity, ensuring that through a regulatory framework that we do everything we can to equalize and level the playing field. And that, if I were to sum it up in layperson's terms, is what we did on February 26th. We sent out a signal to all, particularly internet service providers, that there will be no fast lanes, that there will be no priority given to anyone that you might have a previous relationship, that all traffic is equal, that you choose, the people choose, not the government, not a corporation, but you choose what your legal, let me repeat that, your legal engagement is when it comes to your online experiences. So that, in a nutshell, is what we did, and this will, it's so appropriate that we're here tonight and highlighting the things that you care about, because without that level playing field, without that it being enabled to access the options, the information, everything of your choice when it comes to online, without those freedoms which we hold dear in this country, this one would look different. And your opportunities would be different. And so that is what we are continuing to do. It's going to be met with challenges. You probably already know, I think we're up to at least 9 or 10, I stopped counting, of those who think that, we overstepped our bounds. But what we did was continue building on something that started in 2004. There were some internet freedoms that were expressed by the FCC that were principles that companies agreed to abide by. What we found a few years later, that not every company abided by all of those principles. We saw some problems in the ecosystem that we knew needed to be addressed with rules. So in 2010, we set up some rules in place, high-level rules that in essence mirror what we ratified once again on the 26th. And we had to do that once again because the court found some deficiencies, not within our logic or reasoning, but within or because of the legal foundation that we use. Again, no blocking, no pay prioritization, no throttling of traffic. That when you sign on, when you attempt to get to that online application, that your experiences should be like everyone else's. And so we can talk more about what that means and what more that enables that, but that is the reason. And I bring up my family history because it, in essence, has been a fight for those same types of freedoms. Now we're talking about freedoms more in a digital framework. And so it's so important for every platform that we have ownership of, because it's what you own, ownership of, that the freedoms that we hold dear, that we speak of in terms of our American experiences, that we have that online.
That's powerful. Thank you so much. We're very fortunate also to have the mayor's office here represented. There's a new broadband task force led by Maya Wiley and Joshua Breitbart. Joshua, go ahead and raise your hand. He's from the city here. So we're fortunate to have our voice at that table. And we have our voice at that table because just last week, press release came out, and our own Bruce Lincoln has been named to that broadband task force. So very, very proud, and Harlem is well represented as a result. Talk about broadband, if you don't mind, Commissioner Clyburn. Back in January or so, there was a redefinition of broadband. How does that impact the communities or the country?
It ensures that no one else's content is favored over yours. It ensures that when you sign online, that application in which you're attempting to access cannot be degraded. It ensures that if you've got a business or an opportunity that you want to let the world know about, that there is not a gatekeeper that is prohibiting that voice that to be heard. And so this is, again, to me, a part of our natural evolution in terms of our American experiences and ideals. It is using this platform that has just really flattened, and apparently we've got some interaction here. That's a visual, that's a visual representation in terms of the openness and transparency.
That's right.
And visual realization that that will enable you to be on equal footing, on par with even the biggest of giants. You don't have to have a storefront now. You don't have to pay rent to someone or to have most of your resources go to a physical building in order to be in business. Right now, the world is your marketplace because of this experience. And what we're attempting to do at the FCC is to make sure that with each decision, that any barrier that currently exists is, and I'm from the South, is whittled away. I know y'all don't know what whittling is. But I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm just trying to hide the accent. But these things are very near and dear to me because I think I'm an unlikely person to be in this space. I'm not an attorney. You could probably tell by, some of my disposition. I'm not from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm from way, way, way outside of the Beltway. And those experiences, I think, are allow me to be in concert with you. Because what I sense in this room, it's a little warm, but what I sense what I sense in this room is a desire for you to be on equal footing, that your idea, your concepts, your products, the things that you have developed here, that you have the opportunity to display that to the world. This is why I think at this time, with that decision, why I am honored to play an integral part of ensuring that your experiences and your expectations are realized in the digital, in this digital age.
Yeah, hey, this is incredible. Can you talk just briefly about speed? We hear about gigabit networks. We certainly have an initiative here for Gigabit Harlem, and the FCC just redefined what that was from 5 megabytes down to 1 megabyte, or 1 megabytes up to now
25.
A whopping 25 megabytes down and 5 megabytes up. So can you talk about speed and where we're going with that? Is the FCC going to continue to look at that and how to? I know that when you raised that threshold, all of a sudden certain people didn't have broadband anymore, but if you could talk a little bit about where we're headed with that.
We always made very clear that we were not going to be stagnant when it came to defining what broadband was. That, you know, we started out at, 763, whatever it was. It's just so yesterday. and then we went to 4.1. And then we went to 10.1, in which we're still financing some products. And what the chair made clear is that if you see advertised products, if you talk about how you are engaging online, when you're downloading and the like, 4.1, 10.1 is not going to cut it. And so 25.3, when it comes to, like I said, to your experiences and what is advertised, it seemed to be the norm. And that is why we set that baseline as defining what broadband is. Yes, there's some people who are not very happy with that, yes. It does mean that the definition in some areas is a challenge, but I think and I know through a lot of these initiatives, these bit initiatives, that we can achieve this. You've got to have challenging goals and aspirations in order to reach and exceed them. And if we stay in a 4.1 universe, then we're going to, the vast majority of us, going to have a 4.1 experience, and the rest of the world is going to leapfrog from 25.3. So we have to ask ourselves some critical questions. Are we satisfied with being stagnant, or do we want to continue to challenge ourselves to move to the next series of levels that we know we need to compete? We deserve to aspire for the best. I mean, gigabit, that type of speed, that should be the norm, because that is what it's going to take for us to compete internationally. The great part about this open platform is that it opens us up to the rest of the world. The challenging part about this platform is that it opens us up to the rest of the world. It means that you got to compete with Singapore, who has they've got a different governmental structure. I'm here to tell you, I was there. It's beautiful, I'm here to tell you. But you tried to do some other things. I'm here to tell you, you won't come back. But I want to reaffirm to you that they've got speeds that are out of this world, and they've got industrial and economic and financial and the evolutions and development that's out of this world. If we want to maintain, thank you, I needed to hear that. And we needed to hear it, because it is really plain. If we want to maintain our relevance in this world, we have got to invest. And that investment has to come through a challenge means. And that's why it was so significant when the chair made that not so popular decision to say, this is what we need to define as real broadband, that we should embrace that and exceed that, not criticize it.
See? Right? Just like Beyonce, you get a hand after everything you say.
I wish I had a couple other things like Beyonce. We'll work on that. And that is what an open internet platform will enable.
So as we're talking about this achievable vision of getting gigabit everywhere, it also has changed the discussion as it relates to the E-rate and how you're sort of redefining that. And here in New York, we have a Smart Schools initiative, where what we want to try to do is actually move our schools past the current level we have as far as connectivity. Could you talk some about that and how you're sort of rethinking the E-rate? And I know we have a lot of ed tech and educators in the audience that would be very interested in that.
So what we said last year is that we're no longer satisfied with almost 70% of our schools and libraries not being able to effectively compete, to not being able to download and take advantage of some of the educational opportunities that others have around the world. And so we put a marker down, and we said we're going to invest nearly $4 billion a year to have Wi-Fi in our schools, and libraries, to really connect with competitive speeds needed to close the educational gaps in our schools. We've seen it and we know it. Not all of our schools have the teacher complement or capacity that they need. And if you travel around the world, when I go to Africa, I have not met anyone who speaks fewer than 3 languages. Never have I met anyone. Usually the average is 4, but I've never heard anybody speaking fewer than 3 languages. What's the answer in our nation? And so if we want to really, if we want to level, and again, I keep going back to that, level this playing field, technology is the key. It is the epicenter of all of our national priorities, or our international priorities, because again, we need to start thinking global. So what we're doing here is to make sure that these schools and libraries have the resources, and that's economic, that they need to connect, provide the types of speeds, provide the types of infrastructure they need to educate our children in these communities. Because 30% of us do not have broadband at home. That's a reality. And where that 30% is, some of the most economically challenged in our communities, some of the most physically challenged, those with disabilities, some of the age challenged, like I'm quickly becoming, but I'm glad to be able to say it, that seniors, those with disabilities, those are lower income, those with some literacy challenges. We need to come to terms with how can we allow or give them the means and the resources to become what they are destined to be. And that is, to me, what this is all about. What do we do? How do we invest? What kind of regulatory policies do we put in place to allow communities and individuals to be what they're destined to be? Because the current construct without ICT, without the investment, again, it's not going to be an American experience that we're going to be especially proud of in the next 5, 10, or 20 years.
Sorry, we're talking behind your back.
That's all right. I'm real used to that. I'm in D.C.
So if any of you want to come in and take a seat, there are some seats up here. Feel free. You can walk, and there's stairs on the other side or up there, whatever. So if you're comfortable standing, then so be it.
I want to pose a couple more questions. One that I think leads from what you just spoke about to sort of the culminating sort of issue that I'd like to address. But we're here in Harlem in New York. We're very urban focused, but within what you were talking about with the E-rate or with this kind of universal gigabit broadband, how do we also balance the needs of the rural communities so that we really reach a type of economic equity and parity?
So we're doing that in a number of ways at the FCC. we've got a universal service fund, in which E-rate is one part of it. But the largest economic part of it is we call it now the Connect America Fund. But those of you who are as old as I am, we used to call it the High Cost Fund. And what that fund, to the tune of about between 4.2 and 4.6 billion dollars annually, it is providing an economic gap between what it costs, to provision service and what is needed for them to be economically viable. Because we know in some of these areas, in some of our critical, in some of our urban areas too, even though a lot of this money is flowing to rural areas, that because you don't have these scale economies, now I was an econ major, but I promise I won't go deep, but if you don't have scale economies, you don't make up that, that economic difference. And so what this high cost fund is doing is providing a gap financing, so to speak. So your phone battery is low. I can't take care of that with But what does, again, this is interactive today. So and so what that fund is designed to do is to address that, and most of that money is flowing into rural areas to ensure that those communities have the same or similar types of opportunities that we have in urban centers, where you don't have that economic disparity.
So we're going to start opening it up to questions in the audience. Louis, can you grab that mic right there and help us out? Louis is actually at the FCC as well, working for Commissioner Clyburn, so we're very excited to have him here as well. So we have a question already.
And if you could just use your first name, if you don't mind. Up there, Louis.
Up that way. It's already on. Yeah, go up that
stairs.
See
with the gentleman with there.
Please keep your questions concise and ask questions. We do have sort of a limited amount of time here now, so would ask you to keep your questions,
Dr. Abhi Munir, executive producer of World Liberty TV technology channel. Thank you for taking the time to address us here in New York, Commissioner. My question is, can you shed a little light on the 5G? I was at a conference last week, and there was talks of that infrastructure is going to be set. How far are we from actually having 5G with new technologies being connected, higher speeds? As you see, there's so much new technology out there, and you need higher connectivity. If you could shed a little light on that, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Probably not as much as you would like me to, Doctor. One of the things that we are seeing with our LTE, build out is that we are meeting many of our critical needs, but what's going to happen? I think what we're going to see happening is we're going to end up leapfrogging, because if first you went from 1G to 2G, then the 3G, then the LTE. I think and the meetings that I've had in the experiments and some of the trials that I've been hearing about is pretty soon, when we blink, we will be there. Now there are a lot of challenges in terms of spectral challenges and the like that that I don't know we'll have time to talk about, and that's why all of the incentive auctions and all of the other things that we're doing, it's so vital in order for us to really meet the critical the demands that the public has, and when we talk about the Internet of Everything. So we can talk a little bit offline in terms of where some of the experiments and some of the conversations are taking place with some of the standard-setting bodies. But I'm excited, and I know you are, to see what what's on the horizon, and pretty soon the bells and whistles that we think we have are going to be so outdated, and like I said, it will be sooner, closer to 2020 than we like to admit. So we'll talk a little bit offline.
Hi, I'm Arthur Ware from Albany. I work with an organization, and I'm their technology finance manager, and I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. And I probably have more of an advantage than most people, because I've been working in this space for so long. But a couple of questions that I have. One is, can you talk about the advantages of high-speed networks as opposed to just high-speed or broadband and one-off kind of, programs? And also, can you talk a little bit about the preemptive ruling with Chattanooga and Wilson? Because I think that's an interesting process and an interesting policy conclusion that I think I would like to hear more about, if you could.
Right. So in terms of, I'll see if I can answer your question. I'm not sure, and you can kind of, bring me back in terms of the you said high-speed networks as opposed to high-speed. I'm sorry. In terms of broadband. So, one of the things, and it goes back to, in essence, what the doctor was talking about in terms of infrastructure. And what we are attempting to do now, one of the things that doesn't get talked about when it comes to the open internet decision is the fact that this is a very, it is at the heart of your question in terms of how do we enable, faster and more, robust, networks. And so there are a lot of barriers to providing this infrastructure. There are pole attachment issues that are local. That the open internet item, talks about. You've got to have the ability to, connect in order to provide speeds. There are a lot of other things that are happening. We talked about, some of the Google experience in terms of their, 1 gig cities. That is helping to fuel is more people moving faster with their build out and their rolled out plans than they previously expected. So what is happening as more and different players get into the market, and when the FCC is being very aggressive in terms of getting more spectrum to market, what you're seeing is that infrastructure side of the equation being positively influenced, and us moving, light speeds ahead of which we predicted just a few years ago. So now, shifting to what his the other decision that doesn't get too much attention that was voted on February 26th. What the FCC has said that is we're going to take our mandate seriously when it comes to that section in the Telecommunications Act that charges us with removing competitive and other barriers that would prevent advanced services to being delivered to this throughout this country. 2 jurisdictions, as you mentioned, Chattanooga and Wilson, said that the laws in their states, the laws that were influenced by incumbent carriers, I will be plain spoken, we're prohibiting them for providing the type of network support and infrastructure, high-speed internet access to too many communities, including Wilson and Chattanooga. So they asked the FCC to preempt those state laws that they felt were barriers, and the FCC did that. We saw that these laws were kind of contradictory in nature. So say you were living in Tennessee, and the law said that you can go ahead and provide telephone service all over the state. But when it came to broadband, which would probably ride on the same infrastructure, then you couldn't do so. So we looked at that when we weighed those decisions. And there were also charges that if we grant this and what the municipalities were doing would create overbuild in these communities. What we're seeing is so many neighbors without any broadband. We're not even talking about 25.3. We're talking about just above, dial up. And what are you going to do with that when it comes to, attracting businesses and educating your children? So we looked at all of those things, saw that the environment, that there were too many places where there was basically only one alternative in terms of a high-speed provider. And we said these are significant barriers to deployment, and we made a decision. Now, it only impacts those two states, Tennessee and North Carolina. If there is another state and there are about 21 or so states with the laws that we have seen that have erected high barriers, that the other 19 or so would have to file a petition. But all of those things, I think, when you're talking about the networks, and building. These things are fueling us to move and even to leapfrog, from LTE to 5G, and you're going to see some incredible things over the next few years that'll be enabling. And you are so fortunate that you are in tune, with this process and inside of this hub, because what my fear has always been is that we are. I think that's the cut. That we've got to ensure that we're enablers and participants and not just consumers, of these great, these great opportunities. And this is what we're attempting to do in a number of ways.
Well, due to time, we are going to have to move it forward. So, Bruce, unless you have some other comments, I wanted to have you, Commissioner Clyburn, maybe end with how a community like Harlem. And by the way, you notice we have a very smart audience here.
I had no doubt when I walked in that I was going to be so.
So if you have any closing comments on what our community should be thinking about helping you, right. I know you've got a challenging year ahead of yourself. Is there ways that Harlem and communities like us can be of help or not?
Well, one of the things that I think people do not realize, and when you talk about regulatory agencies like the FCC, what an economic enabler we are. Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges, if you will allow someone in your group to be the point person, to follow the things that we do, there are going to be a number of things that are coming up that are the incentive auction that I mentioned is coming up in 2016. We're going to be coming up with rules that I hope will allow entrepreneurs like you to take part in an auction. But that's not going to be able to happen unless we do things differently. If it's a winner-take-all kinds of auction where just the person with the highest checkbook for portfolio gets all of the spectrum, then things will not change. So we've got some things out there that you need to respond to. If there are different models that we need to think about, different competitive bidding models, different ways that we could, allocate spectrum or competitive or bidding credits and the like. These are the types of things that I challenge you, to weigh in on. Follow our dockets. We're making some incredible decisions that affect your everyday lives. The Lifeline program is another program that I think would be a key enabler. If we reform that particular program, here are opportunities where you could provide different products that are far and beyond what people are experiencing today, and you could be a provider that is enabling your community with better, better service. So we could talk a little bit, because again, I'm getting a real hook now follow our docket. Reach out to me. I would be glad to share with you what I believe is on the horizon, and I will look to hear from you how I could be a better policy maker to open up the avenues of opportunities for all of these fine minds in this room. Thank you.
Thank you once again. We're very honored that you are here, and we will continue to follow up with you. And I hope we get a chance to hang around for a while if you want.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Bruce. All right, one more round of applause. Before we jump into the panels, I just want to bring up to the stage for a few words Ben Kallos, Council Member Ben Kallos, who is going to talk to you for a few words. Ben.
Good evening. It's hot in here. Thank you all for being here tonight. I just want to start by huge thank you to the Economic Development Corporation, Eric Gertler, as well as Gus Justin China, for what they're doing with Digital.NYC. If you haven't been there, you have to go there. They've actually brought it on tour into the physical world from their website, and so please visit it. But they've done this Fibro Tech Tour, which is absolutely amazing, and they've got the tech talent pipeline for any of you who are looking for jobs. I also want to thank Silicon Harlem for hosting us, with a huge nod to Clayton Banks, who serves on the Commission on Public Information and Communication with me, where we'll be working on making as much of our government's information available to you as possible. I also want to give a nod to Jolie McVeigh. That was the gentleman you saw walking behind the commissioner. It is not a tech event unless he is here with ISOC making sure it's live streamed. So let's just give them a quick round of applause. I also need to let you know that we are joined by Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito's digital person, Erica Gonzalez, who is responsible for bringing the City Council online with City Council 2.0. And I'm proud to have been able to work with her with so many other people, but we're trying to make sure that the City Council keeps up with the rest of government. But we also have Mayor de Blasio, who has been a real champion for universal broadband. He took the pay out of the payphone and turned it into a free Wi-Fi hotspot. And today he's announced universal broadband by 2025 for all of New York City. That is huge. And last but not least, I saved the best for last, the FCC Commissioner Clayburn. I'm a huge fan of net neutrality. How lucky are we to have gotten that after fighting for so many years? So if any of you have been to the other tours, I'm going to just ask you to take out your phones. This is the future, and the way we listen is on our phones, so just turn them on. I'm at Ben Kallos. Welcome to the New Media Council. Please make sure to use the appropriate hashtag. So I'm one of you. Not sure how I got here, but I'm a free and open source software developer. I turned down a job at the federal government to be here. And what I want you to know is that this government belongs to you. So we have an open data portal. How many of you have seen our open data portal? Okay, so there's all this data there, and it belongs to you, and you can use it to make as much money as you want. And there are people out there who are doing that. Along the same lines, has anyone heard of the City Record? The City Record is the most important newspaper you have never heard of. It tells you everything that's going on in the city, every single meeting. It also tells you when contracts are coming up. So we're putting that online. We passed the City Record online. So we'll need your help on that, and we'll want you to be asking us for the information in a way that you can make it usable to people. Along those same lines, has anyone ever tried to access the law? So the law, if you're a lawyer, you have to pay a subscription for it, but yet you're still bound by it, even if you can't afford a subscription fee to see what the law is. So we decided to put that online for free, and we just put it in RFP to ask you, anyone in this room, to get paid by us, the City of New York, to make that law available to the world at large for free. You see, we have a $77 billion expense budget, and we spend it on things. And I like to spend it on as many employees as possible, on education, but we also need tech. We need good tech, and we need people like you bidding on it. And so what is our job? Our job is to make sure it is easy for you to do your job, to make money, grow jobs, stay in New York City, and get big. So that's what we're here for, and this government belongs to you. Thank you for your time, and thank you to everyone for putting on this event.
Thank you, Ben. At Ben Kallos. 2 L's. Kallos. All right, so I'm going to welcome up the first panel. This is the Digital.NYC panel. Come on up, guys. All right, so this is the New York City Startup Resources panel. This panel is a panel of serious experts. I say this every time. So I just want to make sure there's going to be 10 minutes of Q&A afterwards. Write down your questions. Make sure to ask these guys because they know. So it's the Digital.NYC panel. It is our very own David S. Rose, CEO of Gus.com. We've got Bruce Weed, Program Director of Big Data and Watson at IBM. And then we've got Eric Gertler, EVP of New York City Economic Development Corporation. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass it to David. I think.
All right. There we go. All right, so greetings, everybody. First of all, I will tell you, we've been doing this 5-borough tour around the entire city. We've been in every borough. We've been in places down south. This is the biggest turnout we have gotten for the entire tour. So give yourself a hand. Really blown away and really impressed. So first of all, what you heard the commissioner say about broadband and what broadband has done in terms of evening the playing field and making everything accessible is absolutely true. She was talking about it primarily in terms of access to individuals, access to education, access to resources, information, all kinds of things. But it actually had an even larger effect. And that's not just individual access to things that are out there, it's the effect that the internet had on business. Because if you think about technology, what is technology? Historically, technology was things like chip fabrication plants and large wet labs and giant computer manufacturing facilities. And New York had no tech industry. None. Zippo. Zero. I started my first technology company on 116th Street in 1983. It was called the Computer Classroom, and we did training, early training of people who were using, first of all, those early computers, the Apple IIs and the like, word processing systems in offices. And so that was the entire sum total of the tech world in New York. Red Herring Magazine described me as the patriarch of Silicon Alley, which is very easy when there's no family behind you, because there was no tech industry here. So all the tech industry was in California, which was doing chip fab, and in Boston, which had biotech and mini computers and the like. But then what happened? Along came the internet. And the internet was this mass enabler, not just of people, which is critically important, but of businesses. Because now every business, whatever business you're in, if you're a restaurant, if you are a doctor's office, if you are a social network, if you are making things, it is all the internet. And what happened was really amazing. New York City, which had zero in the way of technology, happened to have something else. New York City was the capital of the world when it came to things like advertising, things like media and newspapers, things like finance and industry. And so all of a sudden, when you apply technology to all of these industries for which New York City was the capital, New York City, wham, out of the box became the capital of the financial technology industry, the fashion technology industry, the advertising technology industry, the media technology industry. And now New York City today is the fastest growing tech center in the world and the second largest in absolute size after Silicon Valley. And this has all happened within my working lifetime. Within our lifetimes, technology has now permeated absolutely everything here. And so the whole purpose of this digital tour, of this Digital.NYC platform you're going to hear about, is all about bringing technology to the service of everything, not just people, but businesses. And now every entrepreneur anywhere in the world, particularly New York, with all of our advantages, can take advantage of this extraordinary power of the internet. And what the de Blasio administration has done with Digital.NYC is, for the first time anywhere in any city in the world, created something truly amazing, which is to pull together the entire tech industry in New York City. Every single piece of it, every single component, every organization, every person, every event and activity, and make it totally accessible for free in real time, 24/7, to everybody and anybody. Let's take a look. Oops.
New York City is the fastest growing tech startup community in the world.
New York City is the most dynamic, dense, creative, exciting, diverse city in the country.
One of the biggest benefits of New York City is...
Bring it back and let's restart. Get the video here, can we see?
Louder.
There you go.
New York City is the fastest growing tech startup community in the world.
New York City is the most dynamic, dense, creative, exciting, diverse city in the country.
One of the biggest benefits of New York City is the diversity of what's happening here.
There's fashion, there's art, finance.
So much of the tech scene touches every industry in New York City.
New York is a place where people come and they get stuff done.
People here are building real businesses that affect real people.
New York City has always been the most exciting place in the world to start a business. That's not new news.
Digital.NYC is a public-private partnership that's really the first time anybody has connected all the pieces of the tech ecosystem.
We're bigger than the sum of our community when you know that the government and the mayor have your back.
As a startup founder, people that I meet are constantly asking me, where can I find a list of all the best startups in the city?
It's going to be real-time, active. We're actually bringing together the tech ecosystem into one place.
Digital.NYC really enables that growth by creating community.
New York City is making Digital.NYC the connective tissue for the entire tech community of New York City.
And it will be this
awesome portal as a way to kind of bring folks together so that we know we are in fact a community.
Digital.NYC is something that we need.
Wow, I wish that existed when we were first starting.
They've done a lot of the legwork for you.
Truly, as a New Yorker, I couldn't be prouder of my city and more excited about the future.
News,
startups,
Events,
jobs,
investors,
Resources,
Maps, courses,
Workspaces,
incubators,
accelerators,
videos,
blogs.
It's all here in one place. That's Digital.NYC.
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 New York City's hub for tech and startups.
Pretty darn cool, huh? So what I'm going to do is take just a couple of minutes to give you a taste, just a little dip of your tongue into what's going on here, and hopefully you will all go back and try it. Wi-Fi and 4G isn't all that great in here, so when you get out of here, go, after you hear the panels, go and take a look. It's digital.nyc, not .nyc.com. New York City has its own top-level domain of .nyc. It's one of the first cities in the world to get that. And so digital.nyc is where all of this takes place. So let's go through a quick look. All right. This is the home page. All this stuff is right there. One click, one page. A quick overview of everything up to date, in real time, updated multiple times a day, gives you quick access. You want to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on here in the city? This is it. So now let's go deep dive in the site and see what you can find at Digital.NYC. First of all, you've got the ultimate map. Now, for many years, the city had a digital map which showed a number of the super-duper high-tech companies, the names you heard about. But what this has now is everything. The goal is to have every single tech company in the city of New York, thousands and thousands of them, along with every single job in the tech space, as well as every single event. All you can map it. You want to see what's going on in Harlem? You just zoom into Harlem, and there you go. And what's happening here is amazing. I was at the opening a few weeks ago of Cofound Harlem. I mean, you've got accelerators, you've got incubators, you've got all this kind of stuff here, and you can see what's going on in the neighborhood. And the reason we have all this stuff is because under the hood, Digital.NYC has this complete database of every single startup in New York City. And if for somehow we manage to leave out your startup, add it yourself. You can come right here, click the button, put your information in, and it'll be right in here. So right now, there are literally, I think as of today, there are 6,000 or 7,000 startups listed in here, and we are proactively trying to get everybody else on here. So when you have all the startups here, on top, now you can then do other things like curate them. So across the top, you can see collections. This is a list of all the startups. These are collections, whether they are collections of startups in the EDC's Big Apple competition, or the NYC Venture Fellows program, or IBM's Global Entrepreneur program, or the Made in New York program, or the Cofound Harlem Accelerator. You can have all kinds of curated selections here. And when you deep dive, what do you get? You don't just get a listing of the website. You have the full profile of the company. So companies can put all their information here that they want to show everybody. Your explainer video. This is Ofo, who is an amazing entrepreneur. You've got your description of what you're doing, your name, your logo, your management team, and you're searchable by keyword and location and everything else. See, don't see your startup? Add it right there, okay? So you have startups. You have all the startups. You have collections of startups. You have investors, all the investors across the top. Every competition, business competitions, business plan competitions, things happening in accelerator programs, things happening in universities and the like. You can see, and many of these things are for grants and free money and prizes to help fund a business going on out here. Okay, you want to get involved and be active and find events like this in here, although somehow you managed all to find this on your own, I think. But what you have here is a coordinated, comprehensive list of everything that is happening in the entire New York City tech ecosystem. We're pulling in data here. By the way, this entire site is fed live in real time from well over a dozen different API feeds. So we're getting things here from Meetup.com, from Eventbrite, from General Assembly, from Charlie O'Donnell's list, from all kinds of Startup Digest. All kinds of data feeds are in here. If you have an event and it's not listed on here, put it in yourself and add it here. So everything will be found. All right. You want a job in this world? We got a coordinated list here, a comprehensive list pulled together from multiple job sources, from Startup Hire and the Muse and a bunch of other folks in here. These are jobs in New York City's tech sector. And as the mayor had said when he kicked this off, these are jobs in tech companies, obviously, but also tech jobs in traditional non-tech companies and non-tech jobs in tech companies. So you sort of cover the waterfront over here, as well as all kinds of information about how to get a job, how to prepare your resume, how to do your job search and the like. Don't see a job? You can add it. You want to get ready for a job? You want to take a class? Well, we have every single class and course in the startup tech sector here in New York City. This is sourced from Flatiron Partnership, from General Assembly, from CourseHorse, which has aggregated all of the classes in New York City. You can search by industry. You can search by keyword, by type of job, by type of class, and you can, in many cases, sign up directly from the site itself. All right, you want to find a place to work. Well, we have all the co-working spaces over here. These are the giant ones, such as WeWork, which have thousands and thousands of square feet, all the way down to a spare office in somebody's office where they have 2 desks available for a month, courtesy of our friends at Pivot Desk, who are supplying us for a feed for that. You can add a space in here if you have extra space in here. You want to find a space. In many cases, you can click and get it right from here. But what if you want a more structured program? Oh, well, that's okay. We have every accelerator and incubator program in New York City, including the ones that are up here. You can find, these are programs that are either full support programs with office space or 3-month cohort-based programs with training and mentoring. Again, you can find everything here. There are accelerators by industry and by location and by region and the like. You want to know, how do I get started in this world? Well, we've pulled together a ton of resources. So EDC over the years has got a lot of resources about starting businesses. The New York City Small Business Services Administration has put a lot of stuff about how do you get permits in New York, how do you start a business in New York. IBM has put an enormous amount of work into their whole global entrepreneur program. How do entrepreneurs get started? How do you use Watson? You'll hear more about that, an amazing technology in here. We've got videos that we've been creating about how do you get a company financed and how do you find angel investors and venture capitalists. All here, all available in the resource portal. All right, you want more? Well, you can stay up to date on all the news. And we pull in news from hundreds of sources, all the major newspapers and media outlets about what's happening in New York. Not only do you have the news stories updated multiple times a day with a full-time editor, and these are all stories about the tech industry here in New York City, you also have all the blogs. If you don't like to read mainstream, read alternatives. So you have every New York City major tech blog, whether we're talking about Minerva Tantoko or the city's new CTO, whether you're talking about people like Fred Wilson, venture capitalist, Sandy Carter from IBM, they're all here. We got everybody's tweets on here, and if that's not enough, we got to read videos, the whole video section. So all the videos, pitch videos from companies, videos from the EDC, videos from IBM, videos from everybody about what's going on here. This is an extraordinary site. This really, it is hard to overstate how important this is. This is the first time in the world that any one city has pulled together its entire tech sector, its entire startup world here. New York City had it. It has it first. It's a role model for the rest of the world, and it is showing what an extraordinary, vibrant city we have, and we are delighted that everybody here is a part of it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bruce Sweet. I'm from IBM. I'm the program director for startup and business development for New York City, and I'm happy to have everybody here tonight. Great turnout. It's just simply amazing. I've been on tour now with these guys for a while, and it's getting a little bit to be old hat, but when I see new faces and just the warmth of the audience and everybody wanting to engage, I think it's great. So I wanted to start off by setting the stage, kind of talking a little bit about resources and looking at it from a developer startup perspective, and really add on to what David had talked about in terms of Digital.NYC, and it really is a great site. Anytime you can go to some place and have one-stop shopping, go there, right? It just really makes your life a lot easier. So if you're starting out as a business and you really want to develop it, there's really not a better time than doing it now. Why? Well, number one, you can get co-location space for next to nothing, right? In some cases, I've seen business models where people that are in real estate offer space to developers, startups for a year at a time, with the condition that if they make it big and they start making money, they move upstairs and then they rent space. So this is great, right? We can get free space or space at low cost. Then you've got the ability to go and get trained fairly quickly through code academies and different schools like that. Back in the day, if you wanted to get involved in programming, a lot of times typically you had to go away to a 4-year school. Maybe you need to get a master's in computer science. Now you've got an ability to go to a 4 or 6 week training period and really gain those skills, whether it be in Java or maybe you want to program in other languages. You can go do that fairly quickly. Now, in addition to that, you've got companies like IBM that are providing these rich resources in the cloud environment. So the cloud environment that IBM offers is called Bluemix, and Bluemix essentially gives you access to key technologies, everything from big data. You may have heard of Hadoop and some of the things you can do there, to the Internet of Things, so accessing and working with sensor data and those types of things, to Watson on the other end. And we also offer third-party software. So if you want to work with MongoDB or you want to work with mobile-specific applications, you can leverage our mobile-first technology, or Cloudant, which is a mobile database that runs on both the Apple iOS operating system as well as Android. So all the tools are there, available, again, free of charge. If you go out to digital.nyc/IBM Cloud, you'll see a landing page there to get more information on that. But more importantly, we offer programs to support as you move forward with this technology. As an example, we have the IBM Global Entrepreneur Program for Cloud Startups. And there we offer up to $120K per year for startups to get advantage in terms of data services on our cloud platform. So roughly, you know, if you do the math, right, that's $10K per month. That's a pretty good deal. You'll find out it's actually the best in the industry. It is money there for the taking. I do, believe it or not, get beat up by my executive team that we don't have enough people taking advantage of that. So every chance I get, I evangelize it. It's free money. You have nothing to lose. Put in the form, fill out the paperwork, takes 5 minutes. We'll be your advocate. My team is here to help you guys be successful. We do provide office hours. Right now, we're based out of a WeWork location on 42nd Street. And obviously, as the team grows, we'll have hopefully locations in each of the boroughs and, you know, go from there. But in the meantime, please come down on Tuesdays from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We have open office hours. We'd love to, you know, sit down and work with you guys. If you want us to meet you here, that's fine. Wherever your location or business is, you know, just let us know, and we'll be happy to hop in a cab and come local. So reach out, figure out what the tools that you can leverage. If you have any questions, you know, whether it's a business type of thing or how do you go to market, because it isn't just about the technology, right? As a startup, fine, you get the technology, you start to develop your application, your solution. Now you're like, oh, what do we do now, right? We want to go to market. How do we meet with enterprise clients? How do we meet with mid-market clients? Maybe you want to work with the government, right? What are the connections there? So all these things we can help broker. I can't, again, encourage you guys enough. If you're thinking about starting a business or maybe you just started one, really go at it, because this is a time really to take advantage. And then last but not least, we're involved in a lot of the city activities in terms of various hackathons and meetups. So as an example, recently we just did the New York Tech Meetup, and David Barnes from IBM did a good demonstration leveraging Bluemix and Internet of Things. We were also involved in the latest NASA hackathon that happened last weekend. And we have an upcoming Watson hackathon where they're giving away up to $25,000 worth of prizes. That's coming up on May 4th and 5th, and that's actually, again, you can go to Digital.NYC to find out more about it. So this is, again, the beauty, back to close here quickly on what David pointed out. You don't have to go to multiple different places to find all this information. It's in one repository. Click it, find it out. If you have any questions, you know, feel free, like I said, reach out to us directly. We'll be outside at a table to answer any questions you may have, provide you with additional information. So thank you.
In case you didn't get that, that's $10,000 a month in free services from IBM available to everybody as part of this whole platform. So the mayor provides you with free broadband, and you've got this free wonderful site, and you got IBM providing you free consulting services and free software and free cloud services. You know, what's not to lose? And now the man of the hour, Eric Gertler.
Thank you. I should let you know that David and I spent a year together developing this site. This is how he is every single day. I just want you to know. And, you know, as Bruce and David said, we've done these panels in all 5 boroughs. This is by far the biggest, the best crowd that we've had, the best energy. So thank you. And I have to thank Commissioner Clyburn for helping to bring out everybody. What a great talk. And what a, you know, just thank her for the service that she's doing to our country. So thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. Thank you, Ben Kallos, for your opening remarks. I also just want to point out a new member of EDC who joined EDC in the last 2 weeks, who's also a dear friend who I'd known for over 20 years before she joined the EDC, and she's actually standing, so it's a perfect time. Valerie Kennedy, who's our new, she's got a great title, Senior Vice President of Diversity, Innovation, and Strategy.
Woo!
So,
What a combination.
and of all things, she's sitting next to the one person who I know really, really well here, Nakia, who she and I worked together about 8 years ago. So, and then I think I'd be remiss without pointing out two amazingly committed, hardworking New York citizens. I don't know where they find the time to do all these things. Bruce Lincoln and Clayton Banks, thank you for everything that you do. You know, I had the privilege of being in this space about 6 months ago. It just keeps on getting better and better. Bruce and Clayton are involved in everything. And as Clayton pointed out, Bruce is part of the broadband task force that Maya Wiley is leading. You know, they've been in our offices all the time thinking about different ideas, and it's just great to see the energy out here. You know, I was in a meeting at downtown, just outside, next to City Hall, and there were a bunch of techies and some government officials, and we were talking about the term Silicon Alley. And the deputy mayor has been on the record saying we can't call it Silicon Alley. New York City is more than just an alley. We're everywhere, and yeah. But and we said, you know, we started talking about how alley is too small, but should we change the name? And you know, we brought up the point that alley is really a passageway, that it's not just an alley, but it's a connector to everywhere. And then, you know, as we were still discussing, someone brought up and they said, well, what about Silicon Harlem? I mean, they get it. They understand it. Why do we need to, you know, change the name Silicon? And it was based on, you know, everything that Bruce and Clayton had done. It sort of convinced us that, you know, technology is alive and growing really, really well all over the city, and certainly here in Harlem. From a city perspective, there's a lot of work that we're doing up here. We have, just in no particular order, we started with Samsia here in the front row, Harlem Biospace, to help develop young life science companies. And they actually spun out a great program called HypotheKids up here as well. There's the Harlem Garage, which is another working space on 118 and Frederick Douglass. So you know, we've been part of that, which is great to be part of that. We're continuing to look at, and we'll announce a bunch of step-out spaces because we're already seeing companies that are growing here and need more space, and we hear it, and we're involved in looking for additional space up here for growing companies. And I think the word of the day, and we heard it loud and clear, it's broadband. I'm going to talk a little bit later about all the things we're doing, but you know, up here between 110th and 138th that the city was doing with the Glenn Furman Foundation, it is and we're building out, it's the largest continuous free Wi-Fi area in the world up here. So lots of great things going on. Lots of clapping, that's good. So the mayor had a very bold vision for technology. He said he wanted New York City to be the most innovative and the most tech-friendly city in the world. And I can say that technology has infused, and our focus on technology has infused all that we've been doing within this administration. At the EDC, where I'm an executive vice president, you know, our focus is to make sure that New York City remains the globally competitive, the most globally competitive city in the world, but at the same time, making sure that we're creating opportunity for all New Yorkers. And the equity part of our mission is extremely important in everything that we do. And so, you know, within the EDC, we are continuously thinking about, you know, how do we create good jobs? How do we support industry ecosystems? And how do we make sure that innovation is happening everywhere in this city? As David pointed out, tech is alive and on fire in this city. $4 billion of investments went into the technology sector last year. That's $1 billion every quarter. There's now close to 300,000 New Yorkers working in technology. And it continues to be the fastest growing sector, not just here in New York City, but anywhere in the United States. So that just goes to show you that technology has really taken over this city. It's 5 boroughs. That's the way we want it. We want it focused everywhere, and we want to make sure that, you know, again, all New Yorkers have an opportunity to be part of this wave. Very quickly, we think about technology in 3 different buckets. We think about talent, we think about the infrastructure that's required, and we think about community and innovation. So I'm just going to give a few little highlights so that we can have a conversation. But in areas like talent, you know, we launched last year the Tech Talent Pipeline. It's a $10 million project with the private sector to make sure that we're training over the next 3 years, training New Yorkers to be skilled for these new jobs of the 21st century. Now, you know, in government, we always come up with all these sort of similar names. We also have something called the Tech Talent Draft, which is in which we take tech companies to universities in New York City, like CUNY, to make sure that we connect students graduating with all of the entrepreneurial companies in New York City. And of course, many of you, I think, have heard about the Applied Science Initiative, in which we brought Cornell Tech to New York. I mean, it's also happening at Columbia and NYU and Carnegie Mellon. But really, it's all about developing and doubling the number of applied science graduates in New York City, the number of applied science professors. And we calculate that over the next 25 years, there'll be over a $30 billion economic development increase in the city by training the next generation of New Yorkers in this city. In terms of infrastructure, as an agency, we've launched and supported 16 different incubators. We recognize that when you build companies, it's expensive. We want to make sure that we're creating collaborative spaces where you can work together, where you can learn from each other, and where we can keep the rent down so that you're spending money on building your idea and not on rent. And of course, on broadband, there's a lot of things that we're doing as an administration. We've talked about the broadband task force. We've talked about some of these wireless corridors. What we're doing with payphones and converting payphones into hotspots to make sure that we've got free Wi-Fi around the city is really going to make sure that New York City remains the leader in technology and broadband. This is an absolutely amazing initiative, and we're going to be converting payphones in all 5 boroughs throughout the city. And then lastly, in terms of community and innovation, we have, which we'll announce in June, the next iteration of our Big Apps competition. This is a competition that started off on having New Yorkers leverage public data to help New Yorkers and help New York solve problems. We now realize that we've moved beyond that, and we've moved beyond any form of using any type of device. And now this year, it's about making sure that we leverage and rely on New Yorkers across the city to solve some of the big challenges that we'll put forward. And we know that the best ideas aren't just coming from government. They're coming from you, the citizens here in New York, to help us figure out the challenges that we face in the 21st century. I can run through a lot of different things. We are, all government websites are going to become mobile. We're looking at our 311 system and adding social data to it. You know, we're diversifying the economy and thinking about how do we ensure that we've got a hyphen tech economy that leads the world in fintech, in real estate tech, in construction tech, in healthcare technology, everything. And you know, all of this comes together in the platform that we've created with Gus and David Rose in Digital.NYC, which really brings everything together. So I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you all for coming out here tonight.
All right. Thank you, Eric. All right, so
I got one last thing, short thing, and that is when Digital.NYC was launched by the mayor on October 1st in a big press conference. It was because it's such a standout thing. It was covered by all kinds of media all over the world. There were over 1,000 press articles and mentions online, on blogs, on newspapers, and everything else. But by far, hands down, the absolute best coverage of the entire launch on the platform was the Harlem Times. And so Paul Jackson should get a hand for the Harlem Times.
Yeah.
And I noticed as I came in.
You'll see Paul later.
I noticed as I came in that there are copies of the Harlem Times right outside with the whole issue about Digital.NYC. And so if you have any questions, there are in-depth articles and coverage about the site and EDC and IBM and the mayor and what's going on and everything that's happening here. So it's absolutely worth picking up a copy as you leave.
All right. All right. So we're running a little tiny bit late, so I can only take a couple questions. Does anybody have a question? Okay, right here.
That pair counselors, help counselors pair students up with community resources via an online portal. And so one of the things I was thinking about for Web 2.0 was using IBM Watson and the idea of predictive algorithms to find these resources for students basically based on what was inputted in the beginning of the school year. So the issue, or what I'm concerned about, is will there be pushback because you're collecting certain data about the students, about their likes and dislikes, and has IBM Watson already worked it out with school systems to be able to be used by many of the ed tech communities now? Thank you.
Sure. So that's a great question. And so the way it works right now, if you look at Bluemix, we offer a couple of different ways to access and do that type of predictive analytics. When you get into the Watson side, it's more of the cognitive computing, so that takes it to sort of another level. There's not an issue right now because that data is held securely. There's not an intermingling of data. Data is kept separately. So from that perspective, I'm not aware. I'd have to look into what they've done from a student perspective in working with Watson explicitly. Obviously on Watson right now, a lot of the work that's been done with applications are in the medical field. We've done stuff in retail distribution, and you've probably heard of Chef Watson as well on the cooking side. But certainly I can, see me after the event here, and I'll be able to research that a little bit more for you. But there is, again, security on the data, and there are a couple of different alternatives in terms of predictive analytics, depending on what you want to do and what types of things you want to analyze.
All right, yeah, follow up. All right, one more. Go right over here. Yep.
For the last couple of months, I met Justin a couple of weeks ago.
I'm going to repeat the question.
Okay. Now, for the last couple of months, I've been working on an accelerator that's focused on what I call, thank you. My name is Chike. Is that a little better now? Okay. Now, I said for the last couple of months, I've been working on an accelerator that's focused on what I call untapped communities. So minorities, women, entrepreneurs who are veterans, LGBT, and all that stuff. And everything is all set. The goal is to pilot this summer, except that there's a huge barrier to capital to afford these startups to, start up, I would say. And technically, what I've done was I've partnered with Kiva Zip, who has agreed to provide some loans, startup loans, interest-free, that they don't have to pay back for 3 years. And while this is great, great incentive to them to start up, it will be great to have, the capital that says, hey, here's some capital to do some work or, do what you want to do. The question now is to Mr. Gertler. I don't know if I said your name correct. What is the city or state doing to ensure that there are more minimal, I would say, barriers to capital for untapped communities? And Mr. Rose, how do we get this money from investors? I know you are, the super angel investor. How do we get some money to these startups, even for equity?
Okay, Eric, you want to start? Okay, sorry. All right. So the bad news is that getting funding, equity funding for companies is competitive. It's extremely competitive. In fact, venture capitalists only invest in 1 out of every 400 companies that approach them for funding. Angel investors are a little better, about 10 times as good. They invest in 1 out of 40 companies that approach them for funding. That's the bad news. The better news, however, is that there are government programs. So the U.S. government has set aside money. Every agency that has a big budget is required by law to provide grants for startup companies, called Small Business Innovation Research Grants and Small Business Technology Transfer Grants, that provide no strings attached money, free money, up to $750,000 in 2 tranches for companies that are doing things that are sort of good for society and are pre-commercial viability. And the interesting thing is that the odds of getting those kind of funding, if you're the kind of company that is in their area, is actually 10 times as good as getting money from angels. So it's actually 1 in 4 odds of getting money from an SBIR grant if you're in that area. But the best news of all is that the reason there is all this competition out there is because the cost of starting a company has been dropping like a rock for the last 20 years. When I started my first tech company here in New York, it took $20 million in venture capital before we could ship our internet product. My second company only took $2 million. When I started as an angel investor, the first company I invested in as an angel only took $200,000 to get the internet product shipped. 7 years ago, New York Angels, the angel group I belong to and founded, invested in a startup company also here in New York that was an online marketplace for video footage. And when they came to us with a complete website, generating revenue, with a full management team, the total cash they had put into the company was $20,000 to get up and running. And nowadays, the cost has continued to drop exponentially. And so if you have an idea for a website, if you want to sell something e-commerce, literally for under a couple of $1,000, you can get started, you can do prototyping, you can find tools online to get things started. And so while getting equity funding, which is free market capital to invest in that, can be tricky, and it's tough and it's very competitive, the tools are out there now to let 1,000 flowers bloom, actually, and the ones that ultimately are commercially successful can get funded. And the city, I know, has been working with accelerator programs and incubators and going out of its way in literally all the boroughs to create programs to encourage people to start companies and provide them tools and mentorship. Eric, you want detail?
So, first of all, great question. And clearly, as an administration, we're focused on making sure that there's startups, accelerators throughout the city, and ensuring that what you're doing can be replicated and supported, everywhere throughout the city. The problem is that for most of our we don't put money directly into, sort of accelerators like that. But what we have done, and David alluded to it, is we've got, dozens of different programs that we use, and for the most part, we partner with the private sector, who understand how to support companies much better than we do. I was an entrepreneur before I joined the government, and as the way the government works, it's much easier for us to partner with private sector, those that are in the industry that can be most helpful to you. And if you see me afterwards, I can direct you to a bunch of programs that we have that we can get some of your companies involved with and entrepreneurs, so that we can help them make sure that they succeed. So.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. One last round of applause here. I know it's been a lot of stuff. So I appreciate it. We are.
Yeah, you're gone.
We've got one more panel. It's a great panel. It's the experience panel. So I want to welcome up the second panel. It's moderated by Paul Jackson, publisher of Harlem Times. And we've got a tremendous group of not only entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs that are here in Harlem, and also sort of community organizations that are here in Harlem. So once again, please make sure to have your questions ready. Write them down. And we can start our second panel. Some shuffling going on, just a little shuffling. A little bit of an exodus here. We're just waiting for Clayton.
Check. Check.
Looks like we need some help on the last mic.
Hey, 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 hey. Can we get a little bit more? Thank you. Awesome. Harlem, stay with us, guys. Stay with us.
All right, here we are. All right, Paul Jackson, publisher of Harlem Times. Take it away.
All right. How's everyone doing tonight? I want to say thank you, Mr. Rose, for that wonderful introduction, and I want to say to everyone here, Harlem has really changed and really grown over the last few years, and it's a great thing to be here and to talk to some of these young men about what they're doing and what they've done in the community. It's changing in so many ways that when I came here as a child over 40 years ago, it's completely different now. So I want to get into what the three panelists are, what their business is about, what their mission is about, and we want to try to keep that going so we can get some question and answers. But primarily I want to focus on what are the challenges for each of these companies, what are some of their successes, what are some of the competitive advantages that they have. Can everyone hear me? Am I all right? Okay. Okay. So, and then we're going to try to move into the question and answers series. So first of all, each member, we have, of course, we have John Henry.
Hey, guys.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
From Cofound Harlem. We have Sam Sia, right? And from Harlem Biospace. And of course, from Silicon Harlem, who needs no introduction, Mr. Clyde Banks.
So I do need an introduction. It's Clayton Banks.
Clayton Banks. My fault. Just broke the glasses. So what we want to start at the end of the table. What is your mission? Just a brief synopsis of what's your mission.
So just so I'm clear, a quick show of hands. How many of you guys know a little bit about me and what I do? Show of hands. Give me your full hand. That hurts. I'm just kidding. Okay, so my first company, which I think is a little bit more relevant to this, because now I'm running an accelerator. So now we're investing in companies and that whole thing. But the first company was a startup, and it's about as scrappy as it gets, right? And actually, the interesting thing that I'm hearing, and a lot of folks will come up to me and say, well, I have this great idea, but I have no capital. There's so many barriers to entry, like Chike said. Chike's my boy, much love. But that should never be an excuse, ever. You should, there are no excuses, right? So whether it's shortage of capital or sure, we may be starting at a little bit of a disadvantage, right? So we're in Harlem, the landscape is quite different, but when you're willing to work, when you're willing to get up at 5 a.m., when you're willing to sleep at 1 a.m., when you're willing to make the calls that it takes, when you're willing to make the hard decisions and the sacrifices and the gut-wrenching, sickening hustle that it takes, then you will make it, and it's about as simple as that. And that's kind of what I've been about, and that's what I like to encourage in people, and to just let you guys know that we can, right? So even though it seems like a far road, if it seems like your goal is just out of reach, then you have a big enough goal. So keep after it, because there's plenty of us here that are willing to help you.
A lot of folks don't realize that this young man started Mobile City, and he just sold that company a few months ago. So everything he said is pretty right on, on point, right on target. So
Thank
congratulations.
You. Thank you.
Quick synopsis. Yeah. So I'm the founder of a incubator. Is this thing on? It is. Okay, great. Yeah. All right. I'll try to be more booming here. It's a business incubator, but it's for biotech companies. Harlem Biospace. So maybe a show of hands. How many of you have heard about us? So yeah, we're an incubator for biotech companies, and that's something that we started about a year and a half ago now. We've got about 20 startup companies in our incubator. We started this with NYCEDC, Eric Gertler's group here, and these are really some of the most exciting biotech startup companies in the city, and they're here in Harlem. And we chose to come to Harlem. We could have maybe gone to other places in the city. The city's really lacking an affordable wet lab space for these biotech companies, and there's huge amounts of basic research and biomedical research in New York City. So all of those verticals that were mentioned about tech in New York, really, we really ought to also think about biotech as part of that. In terms of basic research dollars, New York City is number 2 in the country, behind Boston, for basic biomedical research. And so really, there should be a thriving biotech industry here. And a lot of that innovation comes from startups. And actually, a lot of that is really in Harlem. And that's really, I think, what's been really exciting so far. And sort of my experience in the last year and a half or so is I'm sold on Harlem. One can see the energy on the street when you're walking down here. But what I've really noticed is that biotech is really sort of a stodgy, conservative industry still. And when we bring people up to our space, they're also sold. And this is something that I wasn't quite sure what to think when we started. But from the big pharma companies, the big biotech companies, medical device companies, when they visit us, they really are excited to have the opportunity to maybe have us, to work with us in Harlem. And right now our space is pretty limited, and so we're trying to grow and trying to accommodate the demand. But this sort of interest in having a thriving biotech economy here in Harlem is actually I think pretty broadly shared by a lot of people. And again, taking a step back, right now in the biotech space, New York City is probably the hottest city in the whole country in terms of biotech. Again, the reason is that there's such an enormous gap between the amount of basic research going on in biomedical research and the lack of actual startups. The gap is huge here in New York, which means the opportunity is huge as well. And so across the entire country, this is the hottest city. And right now, we have some of the best companies. They're small. They're in Harlem. We're trying to find ways to accommodate that growth here. And I also want to mention that the city, NYCEDC again, recently announced the VC partners, the venture capital partners, who will be managing a $150 million life science investment fund for early stage companies in New York. And that's really incredible. It's going to be run by 2 of the top, you've heard of Kleiner Perkins, VC partners like that. Arch and Flagship are the Kleiners of the biotech VC world. They didn't have a presence in New York. They'll be managing this for New York. And where are these companies going to grow? They're hopefully all going to grow in New York. Hopefully they'll grow in Harlem. And so I'll end off with a couple more thoughts. One is maybe the challenge. We really love to stay in Harlem. Columbia University also is undergoing this massive expansion, multi-billion-dollar expansion. It's going to be a world-class neuroscience facility and other facilities in West Harlem, led by Nobel Prize winners, and it's all basic research. So a lot of the new technologies are going to need a place to actually grow when they go into more translational, clinical, applied development. And so to have that stay in Harlem would make a lot of sense. One of the challenges that we're facing when thinking about expanding is actually that maybe Harlem is there's almost too much energy here because the real estate prices are actually through the roof. And so that's something that might, if you're sort of in the incubator business, it's actually a bit of an issue. And the last thing I'll mention is something that Eric also mentioned is this program Hypothekids that we have. A lot of the life sciences being what it is, we typically draw the technologies from universities. So right now in Harlem, a lot of the companies, out of the 18 or 20 companies, 15 or 16 of them are actually from all over the city. So they're actually coming to Harlem, NYU, Rockefeller, Mount Sinai, you name it. They're actually coming to this area. And so that's something that is going to remain because we need to have people, the technologies coming from universities. But to form a tighter connection with the community, one of the things that we're trying to develop is this sort of outreach. And so we have regular programs and seminars that are open to the public for free, and you can just go to our homepage, harlembiospace.com, go to our events, and you'll see the programs. You can come to our space and come to our events. But also the STEM outreach. This is enormously important, obviously, STEM outreach, and we have these programs where we have summer programs from pre-K all the way to grade 12. But we have students from community boards 9 and 10 come to our programs and really work with some of the entrepreneurs as well. And so we're hoping that through that connection, we'll be even more integrated into the community.
Okay, great, terrific. Mr. Banks? Sorry about that mispronunciation.
Sam's doing tremendous work, and we were there for his launch at Silicon Harlem, and I can tell you he has grown his business, I think, probably tenfold, and is in the business of relocating because he's outgrown his space. So what he's talking about, he knows very, very well. Now, I'm having a hard time concentrating because all I can think about is, man, I could use a beer right now. And that man, John Henry, said he was going to buy me one. So as soon as this is over, you're going to hustle your ass out there to the bar and get me a beer. So I've started, I think, 4 businesses, and that's after a very successful corporate career. I had a corporate career in entertainment, working for Showtime and Comedy Central, and et cetera. But my first real taste of startup was with a brand new network, a channel that we called Sega Channel. And I can tell you, as it took a lot of work, as you mentioned, John Henry, but here was the interesting news. We raised $30 million. So $30 million with a lot of work, that's a lot more fun. So we don't want to think small. If you have an idea, don't think small. Think big. A friend of mine just got $75 million before he's turned to revenue, any revenue right now. He just got $75 million in investment. An online network. Really? But he worked it out. He thought big. He went out and hit the VCs and raised $75 million. And he's a hard-working dude. There's no question about it. He's going to be very successful, but nice long runway. So my first one, Sega Channel, we raised a lot of money. We were out there. You know, when you have that kind of money, you get great press coverage. And we at Silicon Harlem get great press coverage without $30 million, and we have a lot of people in this audience to thank for that, including yourself. So we thank you for following us, and Carrie over there, who's put us on television with her, and others in the audience. So we understand the value of PR, but for Sega Channel, one of the things we got caught up on was technology. We actually, although we had a migration strategy for our technology, the problem was that the people that gave us the $30 million started thinking about the world differently. And they wanted to go different ways with their digital strategies and no longer wanted to be partners. We had 3 partners that invested in us, Comcast, Time Warner, and Sega. And this was right when the internet came out, so they all decided they wanted to develop internet strategies. And we were their only digital play at the time, and they didn't want to share secrets. So they dried up our money, and we moved on. So it was a lot of fun. We worked very hard. It was, we're up on the 37th floor on 1633 Broadway overlooking New York City. It was fabulous when you got $30 million. My second startup, and after coming from a corporate career that was paying a lot of money and a startup that had that kind of resource, I was always feeling like, man, I'm good. So when I started my second startup, which was Ember Media, which is still actually operating, I started it on my own dime, foolishly in a lot of ways, but with the same sort of energy. Started very, very difficult, in difficult times, because this was right when the first internet boom happened. So I happened to start at the wrong time, but we survived that downturn. And within 9 months, I had $1 million check sitting on my desk, which I had never seen before. So I was like, wow, this is cool. And American Express had invested $1 million in what we were doing, essentially. So I was really, within 9 months it was gone, but it was a lot of fun to have that for a second. So you don't want to underestimate what you can do with your talent, and I was able to use my talent to grow my business, and it still exists to this day, and we've been able to hire people. We've had people create their futures under my company. Having a 401k was one of my greatest moments with my company, to be offered my employees a 401k. I thought that was a lot of fun to do, and watch people grow and get married and have families. It's just a lot of fun to see that as a business owner. So I care a lot more about those type of things than just running around and talking about my business. I really felt really great that people could build a life around what we were doing. I got inspired by my television background to get into interactive television, so I started a third startup around interactive television, and one of my dear friends, Ben Irwin, and I hit the streets hard all over the country, and particularly in Colorado, to demonstrate the very first machine-to-machine communication using television. Filed the patent, ran out of money in terms of getting the patent done, and now everyone's using using their phones for remote controls. I was doing it in 2009 and 10. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned around those type of things, and plenty that I'll share once John Henry buys me my beer. But suffice to say that when I come to Silicon Harlem, Bruce and I don't think of it as a startup. We think of it already operating in full swing. And we get that power by having people involved with us. We don't look at ourselves as a singular item or a singular startup. We look at ourselves as connected to everyone that is looking at economic development in urban markets. Last night I was in Philly. We are creating a relationship with a very capable group in Philly that wants to start the Silicon Philly movement. Philly has the same similar issues that we have in other urban markets. Some of you might have read this article recently, actually yesterday, about 1.3 million black men missing. The New York Times did a great article on that Ben shared with me. 1.3 million black men missing. That means for every 100 black women, there's 83 black men. You can contrast that for every 100 white women, there are 99 white men. So there's an issue that we feel very passionate about, not just the fact that 1.3 million black men are missing, which causes all types of issues when families break down and crime goes up and hope gets lost, but most importantly, these are real communities, and we've got to figure out ways to make sure that they have hope and they can thrive. Because at the end of the day, urban markets are going to be the economic engines of this country. And when you think about Silicon Valley, which often gets quoted and talked about, it's more of a perception than anything else. If you've ever been out there, like I have, and worked out there, you know that there is actually there's crime there. There's actually poor people there. There's some people that don't have great Stanford educations. But they do a great job of making the perception that it's as soon as you get out of college, you better go to Silicon Valley. So Bruce and I decided it's important that we change the perception of Harlem. You could think back a few years when you would say to your friends, I live in Harlem, and they go, wow, are you going to be safe up there? You okay? So we knew we had to change the perception of Harlem, and we change it in some ways with a simple branding strategy of Silicon Harlem. And all of a sudden, people say, what Silicon Harlem? Well, so does that have something to do with technology? So the first question isn't about crime anymore. And we can sit in a room like this and have like-minded people that can move this, not only this community forward, but all of New York City, as Eric Gertler referred to. So for me, when you talk about startups, I understand that, and I encourage you to, like Chike wants to do, raise capital and work with each other to do that. But in terms of Silicon Harlem, we don't think of ourselves as a startup. We have some struggles like a startup, but we don't think of ourselves that way because it's too important. We are formulated, for those who don't know, we are formulated as a for-profit. We don't have a nonprofit mindset, but we have a social venture mindset. We want to make people successful. We want success stories to come out of this area of New York City. But think about Ferguson. The quote I just gave you about 1.3 million in Ferguson, for every 100 black women, there are 60 black men, the highest gap in the country. So those things tell you why a young man can walk into a store and steal something that's trivial and lose his life. There's something wrong with that. So we don't think of ourselves as a startup. We think of ourselves as a connected network that can impact this country in a profound way by transforming urban markets into tech and innovation hubs.
Terrific. Terrific, excellent, excellent. With a show of hands, how many people in this audience are entrepreneurs?
Nice.
Wow, that's like 70%. How many people want to be entrepreneurs? Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, this is your audience. And how many people live in Harlem or around Harlem in this area, uptown, midtown, this is Manhattan, right? This is your audience. What would you say to your audience now about some of the challenges they would face when starting up a company? And what some of those challenges are, particularly for Harlem or for Manhattan, what have you? And how do you overcome them? And we're going to keep these answers short, but in terms of finance, in terms of space, I mean, Mr. Rose and his colleagues covered spatial issues and some of the things that they worked out that they can help different entrepreneurs. But being on the ground, with your boots on the ground, what would you say to this audience? This is what you do, this is how you start, and this is how you finish. And these are some of the challenges that you're going to expect.
I'll take that, but I'm going to spin that question just a slight bit, and I'm going to talk about the opportunities here in Harlem, because so my first company was pretty much Uber, but for home services. So we did on-demand dry cleaning, housekeeping, and dog walking. And what we found in Harlem was a great place to build a model. So when you're talking about venture capital money and angels and what have you, they're not interested in investing in small businesses, right? They're looking for the thing that's going to make $200 million in 5 years. So they're looking for scalable models. And with that said, we saw Harlem as the perfect place to build a model. So it's culturally rich, there's style, and at the same time, for better or worse, it's gentrifying. There's a lot of investments being made in the area, and so when you talk about starting a company, and all you really need is what they call the MVP, which is the minimum viable product. So all you need to do is create something. It can be clunky as hell, doesn't even matter, and all you have to do is bring it to someone with the big bucks and get them to buy into your vision. So in terms of the opportunities that we saw here, I mean, there's no place in New York City that I've seen yet that has such a tight fabric of community here. Wow. Right, so all the local businesses know all the local businesses. There's a great organization here called Harlem Park to Park, which is pretty much just an alliance of all the top businesses in the area. And do you know how helpful that was for Mobile City to just reach one person and then all of a sudden have access to every single audience of every single restaurant in the area? So as an example, so you guys have something concrete to take away, when we were creating our marketing campaign, right, we thought, okay, dry cleaning isn't sexy, and it probably will never be. So how can we spin it so that it's kind of cool? So we created a campaign called Get Dirty Tonight. And the logic was, when you spill something on yourself, that's when you're really thinking, damn, I got to go to the dry cleaners. So we created these coasters, and we distributed them to the Red Rooster, to Chocolat, to Harlem Tavern, to Corner Social, because we had access to them. And then what happened, just as we anticipated, we put a little promo code, and almost as if like clockwork, when people were spilling wing sauce on themselves, beers, what have you, they would look at their coasters and says, "Get dirty tonight, hit this promo code." So that's just one of the many, many, many ways that Harlem is incredibly strategic way to get stuff done here. And just very quickly, just because I think many of you don't know what Cofound does. So after selling my company, a couple of buddies and I came together, and we wanted to bring that same opportunity to the public as a whole. So we have this program now where we offer resources, mentorship, and free office space for 9 months. And instead of taking equity like a lot of other accelerators, we take 0 equity. The one thing that we ask is that you headquarter back in Harlem. So it's a community building initiative that gives us depth and width here. Thank you. And it wasn't hard to buy companies like Google in. So Google's on board, YouTube's on board, American Airlines is on board. We really wanted to push the boundary of I'm so sick and tired of Harlem existing in this little bubble, this uptown bubble, and it's just Harlem. It's why can't we push the international border? So one of our companies is moving from Argentina to come here. One of our companies is moving from France. One of our companies in the audience, what's up to Perky? Hey, what's up, guys? And it's really interesting. So as opposed to talking about the challenges, I felt it more appropriate tonight with all these like-minded people here and this positive energy to talk about the opportunities.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe, I'll just try to give a brief answer here in a couple of different ways, and I'll probably answer it not from a life science perspective, because probably most of you don't do life sciences. But number one, just in general, I would say be resourceful. There's a lot of resources out there for you to take advantage of. It's true that it's tough to get investment. That's always true. But again, it's also true that to get a company started now the barriers are quite a bit lower, and there's a lot of resources in New York to help you. So I absolutely support this idea that you should use Harlem to whatever degree would help you, but you shouldn't obviously be divorced from the rest of the city. But even in Harlem Garage, WeWork is going to be opening up a space on 125th Street, if you don't know that already, in probably within the next year. I think it's a 35,000 square foot space or so. So you can stay in Harlem, but make use of resources like Digital.NYC and Meetups and things like that. The second way I want to maybe answer that is, and I don't know if this is totally getting at the question, but I think in general, and this is something that Clayton mentioned actually, of what he's doing is a social venture, but and it's trying to do good, but it's a for-profit, and where the startups, the successful startups are the ones that really see an opportunity in society that maybe not everybody sees, and I think the interesting thing about being in a place like Harlem is that maybe the perspective here is a little bit different than what the typical demographic would be in Silicon Valley. And people talk about women in entrepreneurship because they offer a different perspective. And I would offer that maybe up in Harlem here, that the people in this audience might have a different perspective on different needs there are in society. And you can address, if you can just structure a way of a successful business model to capitalize on these needs, that I don't want to be too, but this middle, sort of like the white male in Silicon Valley, trying to have a better, I don't know, some sort of high class problem that they have. There might be opportunities that they're not aware of that are actually very big business opportunities. And I think if you can actually capitalize on that, work with the resources that the city has to offer to actually help you structure a successful business model, you might have something, and hopefully you can grow that here in Harlem.
Excellent.
I'm not going to add much. I think I'm still thinking about this beer that John Henry has promised me. And I think we've got the smartest audience in all of New York City. You guys can tell us a lot more than we can probably tell you. I'll just simply say this, that we have a I think a responsibility as people that have sort of been successful, and I'm talking about all of us in this room. We have sort of a certain responsibility. One of the things that is being talked about in this city is a lot of people being left behind. You know, it's easy to talk about hustling up and getting a company going and being all excited and all that other stuff, but there's a lot of people in this country, frankly, that are being left behind. So I guess I'm in a different phase of my life right now, which is I love having the things that I love to have, but at the same time, I'm very passionate about making sure that we have a country that can sustain itself with success based on the quality of life that we can provide people. I know this has nothing to do with the panel, but I'm just on my own thing right here. And we've got a great challenge, but this is the greatest time in our lives. To me, you know, the internet is the greatest construct in mankind. There's no question about it that it is leveling the playing field. And technology is leading the way on everything. People in urban markets, in particular inner cities, and even more specifically African Americans, have known about cops killing people for a long time. And we've known they've gotten away with it for a long time. But that little device now that just sits there and goes, wait a minute, what's going on over here? Technology is changing the game. So this is more to us than how much money we can make. And we hope we can make money. That's why it's a social venture. But I'll rest easy every single night knowing that I've tried to keep my eye on the ball. And I think that's important for all of you who are out there trying to do the best work you can. I support that. And if there's nothing else you don't remember tonight that I say, that's not just a line, I mean this, is we've got to connect our networks. There's power in numbers. You might build your own little fiefdom and have some success for some level of time, but it will fade, and you're going to be looking to try to replicate that, but it won't work. The opportunity is to connect our networks. And I'm talking across the nation. If we can connect and share best practices and actually help each other and not necessarily tear each other down and create judgment and do this kind of weird stuff that we do that says, well, they're not doing anything, or I can do that better. If we can get out of that sort of mindset like they do in Silicon Valley, where the reason why we live in what's called a sharing economy is because we in the software business decided it was much better to just tell you what my code is than for me to sit up here and try to compete with you on it. Because we can all get rich doing that. And we've got to start putting that in our own mindset, that if we can connect with each other, the Bronx, the Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Manhattan, let's create centers where we can connect with each other. One of the most important things that we have at our fingertips now in this era of our lives is data. Data tells it all. We got to start a pipeline of our young people in urban markets to become data scientists, for example. That's why I'm so proud to be on the COPIC, the Commission on Public Information and Communication, because if I can put the information in the hands of the community, it's not about us just having the ideas. It's about everyone having the ideas. When I worked with President Clinton, he used to say all the time, intelligence is distributed evenly everywhere. Opportunity and access is not. So this is our opportunity right now to make sure we provide that access. We got great people in this audience. We have the mayor's office represented. We have the state represented. We have city represented. We have young and seasoned. Everyone's in this room, and we need to make sure that we're connected. And connected around the idea that technology isn't about the device. It's not just about, even though we talk passionately about the broadband, it's the services that we can provide a senior. It's the services that we can provide someone with challenges. We can change the shift. We can shift the paradigm of what we believe is a good neighbor. We can lift that. So I'm passionate about that. We've got Jahan here, who's going to be running a radio station for us, so we're going to get this message out everywhere. I'm sorry for taking so much time, but I'm thirsty. I think we're done.
Not yet.
Well, he's telling me not yet, but I do want to thank Justin and everyone else.
Not yet.
I'm ready to conclude.
Well, you know what? We want to try to open it up for a couple of one question, 1 or 2 questions. So
hit us up,
here, please.
All right.
By the way, I'm on Twitter at John Henry Style. At John Henry Style. Drop me a tweet. I'm really active.
Is it on?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. You mentioned something that triggered a thought. I read an article. I just got back from Austin to the big broadband conference down in Austin. Great conference, by the way, if you can ever get to it. Anyway, has to do with data centers and what can be done with data centers and how you have to have the right connectivity in order to really maximize it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Anybody?
Yeah. I'll quickly talk about it. Data centers they're actually, I mean, listen, Google just spent $400 million open up or spread their data center up in Oregon. Data centers are the backbone of everything, and we ought to have a data center right here in Harlem. What it requires is power. You have to have power. You have to have the infrastructure. You know this stuff. And for any one of you who want to talk about this, Bruce and I are very focused on helping to open up a data center here in Harlem. We'd love to partner with anyone who's having interest in it. It's a boring subject. It's a very boring subject, right? It's a big room full of crazy-looking machines. But those machines are making money while you sleep. And those machines can create jobs. So if you're interested in something like that and you're a wonky person like myself that loves that kind of talk, meet John Henry and myself up at the bar. Because that's where
One more question. Last question.
Beer.
Well, thank you for your comments. My name is Fatima, by the way. I actually have a comment, and I'm only bringing it up because it touches on what Sam was mentioning and a little bit about what you, Clayton, were mentioning around the issue of diversity in Silicon Valley or Harlem and in the tech space. So my comment is really about, I'm happy to be at this event tonight because I want to see more diversity generally. And so I'm just going to mention that I've actually been analyzing and looking deeply at the issues of diversity within the tech space. And so I'm just mentioning it because I wrote an article, and I'm not saying this to do a shameless plug because I was going to be quiet, but it's only because of the comments that were made. So I recently wrote an article that I posted on my website that talks about the challenges of diversity in the technology sector, and I'm doing a series on it. And I also talk about how companies that are more diverse in terms of racial diversity and gender diversity actually outperform less diverse companies. So there's actually a value that can happen down the road in terms of shareholder value and growing a company. So I'm just mentioning it, and you can check it out on my website because I posted it. My company's name is the Azara Group. That's TheAzara Group, if you want to read the article. So I'm not trying to do a plug for it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm just going to speak to that because I think we got to keep it concise. So when we look at diversity in the tech space, there's a lot of great organizations tackling that problem, such as yourself, such as Silicon. These guys have been huge. Adrisha, by the way, there's a young, powerful woman in this audience named Adrisha who works in the innovations department of the mayor's office, and she was just recently promoted. And I just want to give you my genuine, love and blessings for just representing everyone behind the scenes. A lot of people don't know the work that you put in, but I do, and I just want to say that thank you. So round of applause. But anyhow, so I just want. What's interesting about Cofound and the way that we perceive things is we're agnostic to race when it comes to innovation, right? So I feel like a lot of what has been stifling Harlem in terms of innovation is oh, yo, you got to be black. Oh, yo, it's black and this. And that's very important. And I feel like a lot of folks will disagree with me on this. And if that's the case, then so be it. But when it comes to innovation, when it comes to creating the next ginormous, scalable company that has this global size and power, I think that we have to think not necessarily about color and more about the quality of the ideas that we have. And that's just how I feel about that.
All right, I'm sorry. I cannot let that be the last thing. Because as much as I appreciate your thinking around that, the fact of the matter is there is a lack of diversity.
I agree.
That's not a sort of a wishful thinking type of thing. It's the facts. And the companies themselves. Now, first of all, not everyone in here is going to be an entrepreneur. People have to go to work. And if you are not getting hired, there's something wrong. So, yes, there's a lot of people working on this issue, but it is an issue. And the fact that we can sort of gloss over it and say, well, when Google first came out with their numbers, let me just quickly tell the story, and I'll end up, Justin, you can do whatever you want to do. But when Google first revealed their numbers, and it was revealed by Jesse Jackson, all right, it's something about knowing history. This is not about trying to be racial or anything like that. This is about trying to do the right thing for this country. And the point is that those companies were not revealing their numbers forever. Twitter, Facebook, Google. None of them they didn't have, they're powerful companies, but Jesse Jackson went in, bought stock in all of them, sat at their meetings and said, we want to see your employment numbers. This is important to know. And what happens is, those companies, what was their very first reaction? It's your fault. You're not graduating enough people in computer science. You don't have enough people that have a programming and coding background. You don't have engineers. That was their first reaction. I know why, because they called us. Google called Silicon Harlem and said, we know we put out our numbers and we want you guys to talk a little bit about diversity and all this other stuff. But the communication at that moment was, you guys, we're a meritocracy. There's no reason. I mean, we're just innovation. There's this sort of flowery talk, but you go in their companies and there's there's no diversity. So they said, well, it's your fault. You don't have enough people coming out of Stanford. What? It turned out that was debunked. That was debunked. We have as many people coming out of great schools with computer science backgrounds, with engineering backgrounds, and certainly with coding backgrounds that could easily fill many of the jobs that they have advertised as any other group in this country. And the second, so when they realized that was debunked, and they go, well, I guess it's not your fault. So let's take a look at our own systems. This is important, because if you're going to start a company, you want to have these lessons so you don't repeat the same mistakes that become worse. So the second thing they came out with, which I hope to have a debate with them sometime, is, well, you know what it is for us? We have unconscious bias. Really? Wow. Those are the smartest people on the planet, right? Well, this is a scientific term of why we have no diversity, because we have unconscious bias. Well, even if you buy that and you say, okay, great, let's at least agree that you have to do something about it. And some of us know that it's more than unconscious bias. Let's just be real about it. It just is. Now, I can talk on and on about the nature of this, but it's important that all of us have a stake in diversity. We all have a stake in it. I don't care where you come from, and diversity isn't based on race. A lot of their bias is based on where you went to school. Some of their bias is where you live. Some of the bias is your sexual orientation. Some of the bias is whether you look like them or not. Some of the bias is the way you speak. Some of the bias is your last name. So diversity isn't black. We got to stop associating it with that. Diversity is making sure your company is made up of the best and brightest, certainly, but from all different backgrounds and orientations. And I'll tell you why. If you sit in a room, in my companies, if I hired everybody like me, there would be no success. We'd have some success, there's no question. I'm Clayton Banks. But we would not reach the real potential that we reach. And I'll tell you just a last quick story on Intel, because Intel's on the record of this. Intel, made up of white men. That's self-admitted. I'm not making this up. And they were trying to come up with a new way to charge cell phones, a way that you don't have to plug it in. Just set it on something to charge the phone. And all these men were sitting around trying to figure it out. And one of the women engineers who finally made it into the circle said, when I get home, I start just, taking stuff off, and I have a bowl sitting there, and I can stick stuff in, and my cell phone goes in, and I can, go on with my night. They, with her direction, designed a bowl that can charge your phone. Without her in the room, that would have never happened. It's a great invention that they are now, you'll see it in the next year, promoting heavily. That's diversity. And when you take your eye off that ball and act like it doesn't exist and say, hey, all we got to do is work hard, you're going to leave people behind. You're going to have disgruntled folks. You're going to have corporations that fail. And America will continue to fall on the chain. We already are doing that. You look at STEM. You look at where we are with innovation. You look at our broadband, as the FCC commissioner talked about. We're not at the top like we were all these years. We floated down. So I just want to be clear about that. I mean, I appreciate everyone's perspective about this, but we have to be very mature about this. This is a deliberate thing. And we have to help each other make sure that we are fully engaged in every part of business, every part of government, all this stuff. It all works together. And as soon as we take our eye off the ball, and a lot of us do, especially when we have some success, all of a sudden I've made it, so I don't have to worry too much. I mean, luckily John's not like that. He's made it to some degree, and so he's trying to give back and trying to invest in the community. I applaud that. But please, always keep your eye on the ball of diversity. It is a huge issue, and no, I'm not a diversity practitioner necessarily, but I hope that every effort and everything that I do will result in fairness and equality for everybody.
All right. Time for beer.
Awesome.
Listen, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming. There is beer outside. And don't forget Tech Days tomorrow. Check it out. We'll be there. Thank you.